the last moment of this person, if he suffered or he was afraid, and all this we can see in this face.
Turning a sophisticated AI loose on CT scans from Pompeii was a massive gamble, but the results that came back were genuinely shocking. The computers detected biological patterns that human eyes had missed for centuries.
In this part, we can see the complete side of the cast. So we have to take the complete part for make what part is not complete or is missing.
The victims of Vesuvius, it turns out, had impossibly good health. Yet the AI also proved their final moments were far more brutal than any historian had dared to imagine. The truth, locked in their skeletons, is finally coming out, and it changes everything we thought we knew. The skeletons in the plaster. You see, for decades, one of the most heartbreaking and famous sights in Pompeii was a cast known as the Two Maidens. The plaster captured two figures huddled together, locked in a final, desperate embrace. For generations, tour guides and historians told the moving story of two young women, perhaps sisters or a mother and daughter, clinging to each other as the end approached. It was a symbol of love and tragedy. Then the AI got involved. When scientists ran the CT scans of this famous cast through the new artificial intelligence program, the screen lit up. The AI digitally reconstructed the skeletons hidden within the plaster. It analyzed pelvic bone measurements, skull shape, and limb bone thickness. The conclusion was instant and unavoidable. The two maidens were not women. DNA analysis later confirmed it. They were two men. Suddenly, the entire story changed. Were they brothers? A father and son? Friends? Lovers? We will never know for sure, but the AI proved that the story we had told ourselves for over a century was a complete fantasy, based on nothing but assumption. This discovery was shocking, but it was just the first assumption the AI was about to shatter. The next was even darker. For a long time, the accepted narrative of Pompeii was almost poetic. We were told the residents perished relatively peacefully, suffocating on toxic gas or being gently buried by falling ash. The plaster cast seemed to support this. We see people curled in corners or lying down, appearing almost at rest. It was a catastrophe, yes, but one sanitized by time. The AI-enhanced CT scans destroyed this comfortable narrative. The technology revealed that the majority of victims perished violently, traumatically, and in ways that must have been, to put it mildly, terrifying. The disturbing details stacked up with every new scan. The AI found massive head injuries, shattered bones, collapsed spines, and crushing impacts. The thing is, the pyroclastic surge that struck Pompeii wasn't just hot ash floating down like snow. It was a superheated avalanche of gas, rock, and debris traveling at over 100 miles per hour with temperatures exceeding 500 degrees Fahrenheit. It struck the city not just with heat, but with the physical force of a bomb. The AI scans showed skeletal damage that could only come from this kind of extreme, blunt force trauma. These people weren't just buried, they were hit. One victim's skull showed a perfect circular depressed fracture, consistent with being struck by a volcanic bomb, a piece of rock traveling at terminal velocity. The end would have been instantaneous. In other victims, the AI detected what scientists call the pugilistic position, where the limbs draw up and fists clench. This happens when extreme heat causes muscles to contract, but the AI analysis suggested something worse. Many of these victims were likely still alive when the heat began to affect their bodies. The AI proved their peaceful poses were a lie. Their ends were brutal, violent, and sudden. The AI proved their ends were violent, but how did it even see inside the rock-hard plaster? From plaster to pixels. To understand what the AI found, you first have to understand the casts themselves. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, it didn't just bury Pompeii in ash. The layers of superheated, fine-grained volcanic ash and pumice settled over everything, including the people who couldn't escape. This material was wet and dense, and it hardened over time, forming a perfect rock-solid mold around the victims' bodies. As the soft tissue decayed inside, it left a hollow, human-shaped void in the earth. For almost 1,800 years, these tragic voids remained hidden. Then, in 1863, an archaeologist named Giuseppe Fiorelli had a brilliant idea. When his excavators found one of these cavities, he stopped them. Instead of digging it out, he carefully poured plaster of Paris into the hole, letting it fill the space completely. After the plaster set, his team excavated the surrounding hardened ash. What was revealed stunned the world, a perfect three-dimensional cast of a person in their final moment of life. It was an incredible breakthrough. For the first time, we could see the people of Pompeii, their clothing, their hairstyles, and their tragic final poses. But there was a catch, a really big one. Fiorelli's brilliant technique was also a prison. The plaster cast preserved the shape of the victims, but they completely concealed what was left inside, their actual bones and teeth. For over 150 years, scientists had a frustrating problem. They couldn't look inside without destroying the priceless cast itself. Early attempts with X-rays and CT scanners were disappointing. You see, the density of the old plaster was almost identical to the density of the ancient, brittle bone. When they tried to scan the casts, the images that came back were a fuzzy, ghostly mess. It was nearly impossible to tell where the plaster ended and the skeleton began. That all changed with this new project. A team of archaeologists, radiologists, and AI engineers joined forces. They used modern, high-powered CT scanners that could take thousands of images in layers thinner than a human hair, generating terabytes of raw data for a single cast. But the real magic was the AI. They fed all this data into a machine learning system. This AI had been trained on thousands of modern medical scans, teaching it to recognize the unique density of human bone right down to the microscopic level. It learned to spot the tiniest differences between the plaster and the skeleton, even when they looked identical to the human eye. To make it even clearer, the team carefully injected special contrast agents, like a dye, into the casts. These agents were absorbed differently by the plaster than by the bone. When the AI analyzed these new scans, it could finally create crystal-clear three-dimensional models. It could color-code the image, blue for plaster, white for bone, and even red for faint traces of preserved tissue. It was, for all intents and purposes, a digital autopsy. The AI could see how they perished, but it also found something impossible about how they lived. Pompeii's perfect smile. As the AI began reconstructing the skeletons, the research team focused on the skulls. When the first clear 3D images of the victims' teeth appeared on the screen, the scientists in the room were baffled. They thought the AI had malfunctioned. They ran the scans again. The same results came back. They checked the machine's calibration. Everything was working perfectly. The conclusion was inescapable, even if it seemed impossible. The ancient residents of Pompeii had perfect teeth. We're not just talking good for their time, their teeth were in many cases better than most people alive today. The AI analysis showed minimal decay, almost zero cavities, and remarkably little wear, even on individuals in their 40s and 50s. In dental terms, these people were champions. This discovery was a massive head-scratcher. How could a 2,000-year-old population with no modern toothpaste, no fluoridated tap water, and no advanced dental care have teeth this good? The answer, it turns out, was Mount Vesuvius itself. The very volcano that ended their lives had, in a strange twist, protected their smiles. The AI team cross-referenced their findings with geological surveys of the Pompeii region. They discovered that the volcanic soil around Vesuvius was exceptionally fertile and rich in minerals. One of those minerals was fluorine. The fluorine from the ground was absorbed by the crops grown in the soil. More importantly, the local water sources, filtered through layers of volcanic rock, were naturally and perfectly fluoridated. Essentially, the people of Pompeii had been drinking naturally fluoridated water and eating mineral-rich foods their entire lives without even knowing it. They had a cheat code for dental health, but that was only half the story. The AI scans also confirmed what historians suspected about their diet. The ancient Pompeians ate a classic Mediterranean diet: whole grains, fresh vegetables, olive oil, and fish. The thing nobody tells you is that refined sugar, the #1 enemy of modern teeth, was basically non-existent in the Roman Empire. Their sweeteners came from honey and fruits, which don't promote the same kind of bacterial growth that leads to cavities. This combination of a low-sugar, high-fiber diet and naturally fluoridated water gave them incredibly strong, healthy teeth. This finding paints a fascinating picture. These were not frail or sickly people. They were healthy, strong, and resilient. And this fact, uncovered by the AI, only makes the violent, traumatic nature of their final moments even more tragic. The AI corrected stories about their health, but it also rewrote their personal identities. What we still don't know. The AI's ability to see through plaster didn't just debunk the popular myth of the two maidens, revealing them as two men. It turned out archaeologists had been getting it wrong all over the city. This new technology, a form of advanced CT scanning combined with artificial intelligence, pulled back the curtain on over a century of flawed assumptions. What many overlooked was that we based our identifications on body position, size, and the romantic narratives we built around them. As the AI proved, those are terrible indicators of reality. We've all seen the famous cast of the two figures in an embrace, long presented as a touching, tragic final moment between two women. The AI scan, however, analyzed the pelvic bones and skeletal structure, delivering a cold, biological fact. Both individuals were male, one likely a young man and the other a mature adult. The stories we told ourselves about them were just that, stories. This trend continued as the AI processed more of the casts. A victim long identified as an elderly woman based on her slight build and curled fetal position was revealed by the AI's skeletal analysis to be a teenage boy, no older than 15. The AI could determine this by looking at the epiphyseal plates, the growth plates at the ends of his bones, which had not yet fully fused. Another cast, famously believed to be a pregnant woman tragically protecting her belly, was actually a man who had simply fallen in that position as the muscles in his torso contracted from the intense heat. The AI didn't care about our romantic stories or our desire for narrative, it only reported the biological facts. It also completely challenged our ideas of social class. For years, victims were classified based on a simple, almost naive assumption: where they were found. If a body was in a wealthy villa surrounded by luxury goods, they were assumed to be the wealthy owner or a member of their family. If they were found in the cramped servants' quarters or a small shop, they were labeled a servant or a slave. But the AI could see things our eyes couldn't. It analyzed bone density and scanned for Harris lines, markers of malnutrition or disease during childhood. The results were stunning. Some victims found in the most cramped servant quarters showed bone development consistent with a wealthy, well-fed upbringing. Who were they? A visiting relative? A high-status servant, like a tutor who ate at the family's table? We may never know for sure, but the AI proved they didn't live a life of poverty. Conversely, some individuals found in grand villas, in rooms that suggested immense wealth, showed skeletal markers of severe childhood malnutrition and a life of brutal physical labor. Their bones showed musculoskeletal stress and lesions consistent with years of repetitive, heavy tasks. Were they slaves who died at their master's side? Or was the family itself perhaps newly impoverished, hiding their decline behind the walls of a home they could no longer afford? The social structure of Pompeii was clearly far more complex and fluid than our simple labels of master and slave ever allowed for. People watching this are often looking for a mystery, and the thing is, this technology is the key to solving our oldest ones. Are we missing key details in other discoveries? Absolutely. This AI-enhanced scanning is now being applied to artifacts all over the world. Archaeologists are using it to perform virtual unwrappings on Egyptian mummies without unrolling a single fragile bandage. They are discovering hidden amulets placed to protect the dead, identifying the specific gods they depict, and even finding ancient tattoos preserved on the skin, revealing their religious affiliations. They're scanning the ancient leathery bog bodies from Europe, uncovering new details about their lives and how they perished. The scans can analyze the contents of their stomachs, telling us the details of their last meal, and identify internal injuries that prove whether they were victims of a ritual sacrifice or a common murder. This AI is even being used on the carbonized scrolls of Herculaneum, digitally unrolling them and reading text that was burned to charcoal and thought to be lost forever. It's a revolution in archaeology precisely because it's non-destructive. It allows us to see the past without destroying it in the process. But this new power, this new unblinking clarity also raises tough ethical questions. For over 150 years, the Pompeii casts have been a core part of the Pompeii experience. They've been a tourist attraction. Millions of people have gazed at them, taking photos and selfies, marveling at these statues frozen in time. But we did so under a collective illusion that they had a relatively peaceful end, suffocating on ash as they slept. What do you think? Now that AI has proven the violent, traumatic truth of their final moments, should the Pompeii casts be removed from public display? Let us know your thoughts below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more mysteries uncovered by new technology.